Welcome back, y'all. Again, you are listening and or watching to WJHM102jams.com. Of course, this is Confessions with Brian T. Bethea. Again, we're back with my special guest, Pastor Jerry Q. Parries. Of course, again, the author of The Making of a Blended Family and pastor of Christian Family Worship Center. And again, we are glad to have him back. And we just got through with the topic. We're just finishing up the topic of disciplining the children and stuff like that when it comes to the making of a blended family. One thing I definitely wanted to get with in terms of family events and gatherings, like how do you decide where do you go for Christmas, where are you going for Thanksgiving, and all of that?
Well, it's not only family gatherings for Christmas, Thanksgiving, but it's graduations.
Mm-hmm.
It's whatever the event may be. One of the things that I did when I had my blended family when they were younger, my son was playing hockey, and his dad again was very close to his family, and so he would come over, and we started off where he would be sitting on one side of the ring and we would be sitting on the other side of the ring. But when the child finished playing hockey, he wanted his mother and father to congratulate him, you know. So what I ended up doing is I bought a video camera, and I start videoing to be a part of the events, but kind of having a stand back and allowing the child the opportunity to shine in front of his mother and father. And so when our kids had graduations and they had those different particular things, I would be the videographer, and I would allow the mother and father to be the people that was up close. Now, when it comes down to Thanksgiving, and I talked about this in the last show, Christmas, you know, their father came over to open up Christmas gifts with with his children, because they were very young. They were 5 and 6 or 7, you know, and so he would open up Christmas gifts with them, and so that was wonderful. And then we started having our own traditions and different things that we start doing within ourselves. And then, of course, we moved to New Orleans, and so the kids would spend Christmas with their father in Cleveland, or spend Thanksgiving. And so we end up splitting the kids because we became in 2 different cities, which made it a little bit easier that we were not in the same city.
Okay. Now, I know and sometimes you have issues where, like I know, like for me specifically, you know, I'm split between, you know, where sometimes where I might feel like, well, we got this family function here, and then maybe this family function here. Now, in terms of, is there like a schedule that you learn how to work out specifically in regards to that? Like when it comes to like family functions, not just Christmas or Thanksgiving, but maybe like family dinners, you know, is it okay, let's say like for instance, if you know, one of your sons, if maybe like, you know, if his ex-wife or what have you was still very, very close with the family, is it okay for like her to come around? And, you know, if that was like, you know, if they had a common child specifically together, is that okay for them?
Yeah,
as well?
in our family, if you are part of our family, you are part of our family. So, especially if you have a child. So, for an example, of course, you know that we experience this, that a child is born and that those parents divorce, and then another person come into that life, then the biological parents are welcome in our home to be a part of their son's life, dinner, and all of the above.
Right.
Because again, here's the thing about this. When you look at children do not deserve the drama that we have with our own insecurities to say, I'm not coming if he's coming over, or I'm not coming if she's coming over. That's your insecurities. The children did not ask for that. You brought them into the world. The person that you brought them into the world. Now, I'm not talking about somebody, by the way, that's abusive and, you know,
right.
crazy, you know,
right.
crazy and abusive. They don't need to be around you at all. But I'm talking about somebody who loves this child, but you guys didn't get along together. The child should not be punished for the fact that your new boyfriend or new girlfriend is insecure. That might be a bad sign that may not be the person that you need to be with.
Right.
So we open up the door for people to come and spend time with the blended family, because that's what we are. We are a blended family. And I use the analogy of this. Let's say, for instance, you marry a young lady and she doesn't want you to go, and I write about this in the book. She doesn't want you to go visit your child. And so you end up having a child with her, and something happens to that relationship. Is it fair for the new woman that you get to say to her, I don't want you go visiting your child? How would she feel about that?
Right.
And if you agree to that, to not visit your son because of a woman's insecurity, then that woman must need to know that she is marrying a guy who is not man enough to man up to his responsibilities.
Wow.
And that is something that, but because we love them and we want them, we overlook that red flag.
Right.
If you can forsake your son or your daughter for another person, you are not the kind of person that need to be married to anybody.
I like that.
My opinion, take it, leave it. Children are important. They deserve their parents, and they deserve to have you in their lives.
Exactly. Now, I want to get into the front cover of the book because I know on the front cover, it looks like, of course, like the Brady Bunch.
Yes.
But specifically, you have a black family on one side and a white family on the other. Now, in terms of, I just want to make sure that we clarify with people, that's not what he meant by the making of a blended family in terms of like race. It's the whole dynamic that we've been talking about.
Yes.
In that regard. So, but can you talk about why you specifically chose like this particular outlook of the cover, and then how do you deal with the blended families when there are two races and or two ethnic cultures involved?
First of all, how did I choose the cover? I chose the cover because it looks like the Brady Bunch, and I wanted to send the message that it was that kind of family, the Brady Bunch.
Right.
My graphic designer actually hooked up the different cultures and
Right.
families there. When it comes to different cultures and blended races, that is, at this moment, I'm researching that for my new book. But I can truly say that if you are an American and you marry somebody from Jamaica, different culture, or British, you have to find out. That's a whole nother dynamic there, because some countries, men are dominant, and then when you come in America where you have a lot of liberal women kind of doing their thing, that may not mix real well with an African brother, And I'm not saying that, again, I'm researching, so I'm really not as versed to talk about that today as I am about blended families.
Gotcha. Okay. But I do know that is something that needs to be talked about because I know.
Absolutely.
Well, we can kind of delve away from that, but still kind of, I guess, keep with that in a way. With not, you don't have to go too much in depth. Let's break that down then in terms of, because really, a family is a culture, no matter if basically like a culture within a culture, if you know what I'm saying. So like I know you and your mate can be of the same race and same ethnicity, but because you were raised in the way you were raised in your home can be like part of your, I guess, household culture.
Absolutely.
So how do you determine? I know there's couples out there that are having troubles in terms of like who handles what responsibilities in that regard, such as who like pays the bills or who pays which bill, I should say, or who handles the cleaning or cooking responsibilities. How do you and Mama specifically, how do you break down in terms of, or how do you communicate who does what responsibility and what you're responsible for?
Well, there's two ways to approach that. The first way to approach it is before you get married, you discuss all of this in premarital counseling. That's the best way, so that you'll know who's cooking what, who's paying what. Is it going to be a separate account or two different accounts? Are you going to pool your money together? You're not going to pool your money together. If both parties are working, are you sharing in the housing responsibility? Or is if the wife is a homemaker and the husband is working, is she cooking dinner? So there's a variety of things that you got to talk through, and that is based upon individual couples, how they work best. Because in my family, I do 95% of the cooking because my wife doesn't like to cook. I love to cook. I like to cook, and I cook pretty well. So
he's good at it, y'all. I gotta say it myself.
Yeah. So I enjoy cooking. So if I'm waiting on my wife to cook a meal, that may not be coming anytime soon. But that doesn't mean that that's everybody's marriage or everybody's way of doing things. That's just how we operate in our house.
Okay. Now I noticed a lot of stuff or a lot of things. One thing specifically that doesn't get talked about, but I know our church actually talks about it because I know it's part of a part of marriage and helping to keep marriage together. Why is it that you feel, or do you feel? Actually, this is more of a question on my part. I don't feel a lot of churches really delve into the subject of sex with their marital partner. Is there a particular reason why you feel that way, or not? I'm sorry, you don't feel that way, but is there a particular reason why it seems that way? That a lot of people don't maybe talk about that, or is that something that they think should be handled more so in private?
Well, I can't speak for how they feel. I do think that sex is still a taboo subject from the church perspective, even though everybody's doing it. And none of us get here without it. And it's all through the Bible, sexuality. I just think it's a subject that makes us all uncomfortable,
right,
to have. And so I oftentimes talk about it that women need security, men need sex. Men need sex like fish need water,
right.
And so can a fish live without water? No. A marriage can't survive without a man making love to his wife.
Right.
I mean, that's how he feels loved. A woman feels loved by a man taking care of his responsibility and making her feel secure. So those things need to be talked about. But that's not a blended family issue. That's a human issue.
Yeah.
And so it's something that should be really discussed in premarital counseling.
Right. And I mean, the only reason why I did bring that up is because I know that's one of the reasons why marriages are being torn apart, and then hence people end up having to make a blended family.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely wanted to make sure, that I wanted to, ask that question in regards to that. And the other thing is finances. And, what are some things that or some pointers that you think you can give people or marriage couples or couples in general about how to handle their finances when it comes to marriage?
Well, one of the things is that you have to get a budget, and you have to talk about where the money is going. When it comes to marriages, when you have two people working, sometimes when they receive their paycheck, and they feel like it's their paycheck, it makes it very difficult for a family to function. In this day and time, you almost need 2, 3, 4 incomes to make a marriage work.
Right.
And so you need somebody that understands that they are your life partner and your helper. When God made Eve for Adam, he says, I'm going to make you a helpmeet, not a separate meat,
Right.
And so you need somebody to walk with you and strengthen you where you're weak in what areas. And sometimes finances, you got to find out between the two of you all who could save better, who could budget better, and work with your spouse to do that, and not because if you work separately, it's going to ultimately hurt the family. You got to work together to make that happen.
Now, is it okay for a couple to have strictly 2 separate bank accounts, or should they have at least 2 separate bank accounts for themselves and then maybe a joint account to handle like responsibilities such as the bills and maybe the mortgage and stuff like that?
Well, again, it's no one way to do it. It's what works for your family. Here's what I do know: if you got one bank account, one of the greater ways to do it is to have a money set aside, and I think in an account for the family, and then everybody get an allowance. And if they spend their allowance the way they want, but they can't dip back into the operation fund of a house, that works well with me.
Gotcha. So once again, y'all, what we were going to do, of course, we got some bills to pay. But again, before we go on break, download the app, WJHM102jams.com, on your Android phone if you have an Android. Again, if you have an Apple phone, you are out of luck. So definitely you got to go through your web browser. But again, we will be right back with Pastor Jerry Q. Parries on WJHM 102jams.com. We'll be back in just a minute, y'all.